The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, and this is People's View, the panel discussion. We are going to have the four of us who are ex-legislative members for New Hampshire talk about some of the current things that are going to involve our state. So, Don, introduce yourself, and we'll move around from you.
I'm Don LeBrun, former representative, former alderman, now serving on the Board of Medicine for the governor.
Former Senator Kevin Avard, District 12, and former also state rep.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Ward 1.
Ward 1,
I'm from Ward 1 too, 4-term state rep in Public Works.
And I'm Bill Ohm, 3-term representative serving on the House Ways and Means Committee, and recently a candidate for Ward 9 alderman.
So we're going to talk about a number of different things today, but just to fill you in on a few things, the legislature starts right after the first of the year. Mm-hmm. I think it's either January 8th and 9th are the first sessions where they talk about the retained bills and seeing what they're going to do. One day is going to be handling 2 vetoes that we haven't handled so far as they seek to override the governor's veto. And that might take the first 3 sessions that they have before they actually get into any of the legislative stuff that is going to go through.
Correct.
There are a number of bills, I think it's over 800 that are going to go through the House. And I'm not sure if the Senate has finished even counting those.
I'm not sure that they are.
Okay, yeah. And so it's going to be a little lighter, but one of the things that they're going to be talking about, as I understand it, is a lot of the things that have been vetoed, coming back with a little different flavor maybe, but that's going to be a volatile discussion. Yeah.
I think there's 4 gun bills coming back that are basically duplicates, slight changes from the last.
Right.
They were shut down?
Yeah, that were vetoed.
So there's going to be an interesting session. We've done the budget, so how do they get financed if they require financing? That means special laws that will require how a fee or tax is going to be implemented.
And there are some proposed fees.
Mm-hmm.
The right to know, which is basically a fee, to pay for your request for a right to know, rather than just pay for the paper, you have to pay for the time that it takes to amass whatever information it is you want.
Who's the sponsor of that bill?
That's Ward 1, Jan Schmidt.
So we're going to add another layer of bureaucracy to the right to know,
right.
With a fee.
And it's nothing but to discourage people from requesting a right to know. Right. That's all it amounts to.
They're all complaining about because they don't have a good filing system, or they don't have it all digitized so that you can't pull it up very easily. But it is going to be very, very expensive to do that. And that's the way that what they're doing now is just delaying getting information out.
Well, that's what the people that are giving you the information, that's what they get paid for.
Right.
I mean, they're getting paid to do their job.
Right.
So why should you have to pay on top of that to get the information? I can understand paying for the paper that takes to print it.
Uh-huh.
But why should you have to pay for the time that it takes?
Well, you make a good argument, Don. That's what, because they're very confusing on how they generate some of this stuff and how they justify it. Yeah. I think that's something that has to be, in our system of government, we have to know who's making the government,
Right.
Let me talk a little bit about the process on this, Carl, because I sat in Ways and Means. Mm-hmm. And what we had in the second year were a bunch of bad ideas that didn't make the budget,
right?
But came back as a fee or a tax or a surtax to get money for these bad ideas. And we get some sob story that, this is so important and we just have to add this surtax to pay for it. And then if you look at the bill, it said, well, that looks familiar. Didn't we see that as part of the budget that got kicked out because it's going to be funded? So we're going to see a lot of that. There's one that particularly bothers me, which is a bill that was talked about in the paper about a surcharge on speeding tickets. Now, I served on a commission that happens every 2 years to look at fines on speeding. And the first question we always have is, well, what's the problem? Are people really speeding too much? Do we need to do some changes to the laws to affect speeding or safety? And typically, when I served, it was, well, no, actually, the violations are not increasing, but we still want to increase the fines. Well, for what purpose? And the purpose, of course, is to raise more money for projects that failed the first time around.
Right.
So in speeding, for example, there's 2 tiers. There's a tier between 0 and 15 over the limit, and then after that goes to a second tier. And the bill is proposed to knock that second tier down to 10 over, and then get into the more serious surcharges of fines. And unless there's a problem with people, blasted down the highways with safety, I don't see any reason to increase the fines for that. And I think it's just a blatant money grab to use it for other purposes.
And the wording is just another way of trying to cover that excess that they want to add. And do you mean 1 mile an hour over that limit or what? I mean, it was some,
There's a spirit of micromanaging people, and there's a fleecing of the American of the citizens of New Hampshire that's going on, and it's never enough. It will never be enough. Somebody proposed a 4.3% sales tax. Well, is that going to replace the property tax?
Of course not.
No,
No.
it will never.
Once it's implemented, you don't replace it or do away with it.
But it's this
You only
tax,
increase
it's
it.
that tax. They went for the canoe tax or the kayak tax. You keep going on. The disposal of waste. There's a tax. Eventually, the people are going to, hopefully they revolt and vote for some people that are actually going to vote for their interests. But we're not sending these people up there to create more laws that we have to obey. They're there to serve us, to protect our freedoms and our liberties, not to fleece us. And that's I really feel what's going on here.
well,
It's all about the Democrats believing that you cannot manage your own life.
Right.
That they have to manage it for you.
and they know better. And
Oh, yeah,
everybody
absolutely.
should do the
They know
same
better.
thing.
And they just need the money to put those rules into place.
That's all.
Are you guys watching the hearings at all? With
I am very closely.
any thoughts on that?
Well, you're talking about which hearings now? The hearings on the
With the Horowitz.
Horowitz, yeah. Definitely. The one today was very interesting. When you have who was the chairman again?
Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey
Senator
Graham. He read a very good intro to that, the whole program.
I watched that whole thing.
Yeah,
But if you watch that on CNN or you watch that on MSNBC,
you didn't.
Lindsey Graham's statement was cut off.
Completely.
Cut off.
They had a committee to talk
Media
about what
micromanaging.
they had a committee to talk about what he was going to say rather than listening to what he had said. And Carl and I were talking a little bit about this earlier, or at least I was. I was just watching something on Netflix recently, and it had to do with Dresden. Dresden in World War II. It was basically after the turning point of the war, and there was some heavy bombing that was going on. And it was a severe bombing. Basically,
It was firebombed.
they were firebombed, but and the bombing
Non-strategic
correct.
city.
And they were basically taking on the MO of Hitler, because Hitler was just carpet bombing. He killed 45,000 people in one of his first raids. So the guy, Harry was his name, he did the same thing in return. Well, 25,000 people died that day. But this guy named Goebbels put an extra zero on that, and it outraged the world. And he just kept repeating that lie over and over again, and it stifled what was going on at that time. Meanwhile, people were outraged at the destruction that was going on in Germany. but 35,000 people were just executed in mass graves, and there were millions and millions of Jews that were being tortured and burned alive. But the media wasn't covering that. That we couldn't really believe all that, and I think this whole tactic of the media just manipulating truths is akin to what Goebbels did.
If you tell a lie often enough, somebody will believe it.
Sure.
The masses will believe it.
And that's a frightening thing. And when a very small micro amount of corporations that are running these medias are not telling the whole story. You brought this up in our last interview here. The tax rate went up only 2.5%. Yeah, but that's for the first 6 months, right? But tell us the rest of the story. Where's Paul Harvey?
Yeah, where's Paul Harvey?
But it was so bad back then, but he kept repeating the lie. It can happen again if it's not held in check.
They're repeating it. The four different medias that are using the same words. It's almost like they have one script writer.
Yeah, well, every day the Democrats put out talking points that they send to all the media.
Yeah.
So here's the talking points. So you see the same words being picked up by the liberal press.
Right.
Well, I love when they replay those, and every reporter
Yeah,
is
it's the
using
same-
that
same
same.
words.
Yeah, they do a
Right.
montage.
Yeah.
Right. They do
Different
a montage.
person, same script, Let me read the teleprompter. Oh, blah, 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 blah. Okay.
I remember they did that way back during the Clinton year, and it was the word, the key word was gravitas. I don't know if you remember. Everything had gravitas, and all the media was talking about gravitas. And it seems as though they're all on the same page. But if you're not telling the whole story, if you're not doing really investigative story in informing the American people what's really going on, you're doing a grave disservice.
So what's really going on? You've got these company heads with an agenda, and they're directing the reporters to pursue that agenda. Now, Michael Bloomberg was very direct about that the other day. Interviewed on CBS. He said, I've directed my news staff to not cover the campaigns of the Democrats.
We're going to zero in on Trump only.
Because,
That's fair, right?
and he thought that was fair. And they said, well, look, I'm paying their salaries.
Yeah.
So they're going to take their orders from me.
That's a lot. We have a free media to inform the country. A well-informed country is a safe country. But if it's not well-informed, if it's misdirected on the masses level, that's very dangerous. You're looking back in history, and that happened. You had Goebbels controlling the media, and then you had Heimlich or whatever his name is. You know what I'm talking about. He was controlling the education part of it.
Well, that's the part that I'm worried about too, mostly, is because it's in our education system.
And do we have critical thinking, Carl, in
No.
today's education system?
Not at all.
Do we debate both sides?
No.
No, of
They do
course
one side,
not.
now
Kids
take the
are
turn
being
and debate the other
indoctrinated
side?
from a very young age now.
Right. The executive order from President Trump with support of the Jewish population. If you're going to discriminate against them, if you're going to target them, then you're going to lose your federal funding. The outrage, the free speech. Oh, hello, free speech. You have any conservative go on any campus and see where free speech ends immediately. This has got to stop. And basically that policy. Just one more thing was introduced by President Obama, but that was okay. Right? Now President Trump's just enforcing it. And now the outrage.
A little bit of good news on that, as I read recently, that UNH is now pretty good about talking about both sides of the issues.
It's important.
So that's,
And
glad
if people speak up, they'll be held accountable. And I think that's the important part of this. And this whole thing with charter schools, it's still an issue. Right.
That's coming up again on Friday, is
Right.
it?
Friday,
It is this Friday, right?
how's that going to turn
Friday.
out? Do you have any thoughts, Kevin?
I don't. I do not know
most
where it's
likely
going to land.
going to turn out the same way.
Yeah.
They'll take it off the table. They'll discuss it a little bit. They'll either put it back on the table or they'll take a vote on it and defeat it again.
Either you're loyal to the unions
That's right.
or to the children. Our Constitution
Yeah.
and this whole system is set up for the kids.
And in this case, they do not care whatsoever about the education of young children. They have no thoughts whatsoever in that respect. It's just all about the union, what the union wants, what the administration wants, what the party wants, and that's the way they're going to vote.
And think, these charter schools, number one, they're public schools. Mm-hmm. They're doing the job for half price, and they're doing a really good job. And we have ample evidence here in Nashua alone that these charter schools are doing a great job. Nationwide, they're lifting kids out of poverty. Why would you
Why
be?
don't they accept that?
Well, why the hell wouldn't you be? Would you be against that?
Yeah.
What is the ultimate service for that? What
If you're for the children, shouldn't you be for charter schools? I mean, we all hear these things about, well, it's for the children. It's for the children. Well, isn't charter schools for the children?
It's all about the children. It lifts them up out of poverty. And this is just really a serious issue because there are kids that are falling through the cracks that are not being served by the traditional public schools, which nobody's throwing aspersions to them. But there's kids that learn differently.
Absolutely.
And they deserve that opportunity.
And the focus of some of these charter schools is really amazing. The way they can really look into the way they are teaching, which is A is different than B, and they're doing different, but they're affecting the people that are being taught much better than any of the other schools because they don't focus. They try to give one way of teaching for everybody.
Right.
But we have the top school in New Hampshire, and we have one that's in probably the top 25 anyway.
34th.
So anyway, that's something that we ought to be, right here in Nashua, we ought to be able to favor. And we see the work that's being done. And it's being done, as you said, at half the price.
They also claim that the charter schools discriminate as far as disabilities and whatnot. It's a total lie.
It is.
And they know it's a lie. They do not discriminate in any way whatsoever. It's a lottery system. The next kid in line is the kid that comes in. If he has disabilities, they accommodate those disabilities. And that is a fact. So any other negative about that situation is just a barefaced lie.
It seems
all there is to it.
It seems as though that when you think outside of the box or outside of the Department of Bureaucracy, you're always going to get resistance. And leaders, movers and shakers throughout history, when they have a good idea, it takes time for it to get traction. It is getting traction in our country. Across the country, it's getting traction, and people are seeing the results, especially in the inner cities like New York, Chicago. They're seeing this happen, and when the Department of Bureaucracy comes after them, there's resistance. Why? Because it works. It works. It works well, and we need to, again, constantly talk this
Well,
up.
it shakes up the status quo.
Sure.
And people get unhappy about it. They like their
obvious.
comfortable situation for them and don't like to have it disrupted for the benefit of somebody else, like the kids.
Right.
It's obviously the feds realized what the situation is. They offered $46 million over a 5-year period.
And where did that go?
Well,
That's
that's
what
what's been tabled.
But I think our audience really should start calling in to their representatives to make sure that somebody's paying the right attention to these things. And other things that have to do with education. Right here in Nashua, we have so many questions that are coming up. We have to build a new middle school, and we have to refurbish 2 other middle schools, plus other maintenance that we've delayed, and that's going to be a heck of a lot of money. I don't see, I've been to one meeting where they were talking about building a completely new middle school. They have the location and everything, which is questionable too now about some problems at the location. But the thing is that they've planned for expansion in there. Now, we have gone down in population for kids for, I don't know, about, 15, 20% over the last
Enrollment,
10 like
years?
that,
Across the state, it's down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I see building a place where you are enabled to have expansion when you need it, but don't build it in now, because obviously the trend is not to have more kids going to school.
Well, during negotiations, the cost has gone from, I think it started at something like $40 million. It's up at 120 or 130 million now.
Right.
You know, it's all those delays.
things in that.
You know, make a decision, do what's necessary, and get it at the cheapest cost.
Right. Well, you know, when I moved here into New England in 1969, this was in Chelmsford, Massachusetts. I got hit with they're going to build a brand new high school for 4,000 kids. Yeah. They're going to have 4 different elements there. So they'd have different houses and they're going to be separate. It's almost like a college campus. And I forget how many, it was well over $25 million for this whole thing. And boy, did we get a tax rebellion. Everybody told them no. They fired the building company, group. Another bunch of guys got in. They put up a beautiful school. It handled 3,000 because that's all they really needed. They still had 4 houses. They did it differently. They didn't put in the swimming pool. They didn't put in another auditorium because the old high school still could be used for those type of events.
The parking lot for 16-year-olds to drive to school.
Yeah, that's 2 parking lots, as a matter of fact. And what happened is that the new building commission came in at half the price. They were able to build it right away on 10-year bonds, not 20-year bonds. So they saved well over $20 million from the original, and it worked out. They still don't have a pool there, though.
I think they have an indoor running track, though, don't they? And they had a great wrestling team.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they did, and they were one of the top ones in Massachusetts. My 4 kids got a good education there before we moved away.
So spending double doesn't necessarily correlate to great education. We got to be smart about it, and it seems as though the bill's going to come.
Right.
You know, we're going to end up paying. I mean, if you're worried about your taxes now, I think the total cost is. I saw something on Facebook, so it's got to be true. $171 million for all the renovations.
Yeah,
Well, that's a lot of money
that is.
over a 20-year period. That means you're that's just that.
Yeah.
You know, not everything else that's included.
Well, they're still doing the art
Center
thing. That's another one.
That was supposed to be what, 7 or 14,000 million?
Now it's 25, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Is that the
25
Farmer
to
Alex
40,
shoe
somewhere
store?
in there.
Eventually, we're going to be starting to talk about real money.
We have to get back to realizing that we have to spend other people's money the way we spend our own.
Right.
You know, right now, other people's money doesn't matter. Plenty of it out there. Let's find a way to spend it. And that,
Well, I think
Makes
people
no
are starting
sense.
to really see what happens, the problem we're having with the assessment here and doing it all over again. So you can count on it's not going to go down.
No, it's not
going to
going
find
down.
another way to make it go up.
reassessment will cost twice as much.
Yeah.
I met somebody at one of the polls, and she was a property owner, 3 different properties, and she complained to me. It was in Ward 2, and she complained to me. It's about the assessments, and it wasn't because they were too high. It's because they were too low, and somebody got some special treatment. Which, is that possible? I know that there's a few other people looking into that. And why, you know, and are people getting special treatment on their assessments? I don't know. Corruption has a funny place of showing up in the weirdest places, but narrowly, do you ever see somebody complaining about their assessments being too low? But she thought it was. She thought it
Isn't
was
that in
wrong.
the report that Lori Ortolano developed? I understood
And
that
this
it
wasn't her.
was, and it was supposed to be looked into by the police force, but we haven't heard anything on that. We haven't heard about the guy who sleeps on the job either.
He's still employed.
Yeah,
It's scary when you have one party control.
Right.
I know we're not supposed to talk about one. You know, it's not. Local elections are not
Partisan,
aren't partisan, but
but they
the
are.
reality is they are.
hmm
Everything from the mayor down, it's all one party. They're and they're going to look out for themselves, and that's a lot of power.
But you have no debatability whatsoever if you don't have two sides.
right.
Or three.
We're 3, yeah. Doesn't matter. There's absolutely no way to debate anything. It's all cut and dry. Whatever the chief says, whatever the puppeteer, whoever string he pulls, that's it. That's it.
A lot of things which looks to have more, need to have more debate, more
Of
discussion.
course. It's the only way
Because
you
they-
settle problems is to have a decent debate.
Sometimes the only way you find problems too.
Well, you find problems, you
start
settle
talking
problems.
about it,
But
yeah.
it still takes two sides.
Yeah.
Well, was it Neville? Was it Neville Chamberlain who said, not that he was a great
Neville
success.
Chamberlain, yes.
He says, try and try and try again, or never quit. I'm not sure which one of those he said, but we have to have people that are going to run for office that will not quit.
And never surrender, to quote Winston Churchill.
Churchill said, "Never surrender."
Yeah.
We'll meet him on the beach. We'll meet him.
we need our audience to start talking.
Yeah.
Start joining the Republicans. We'll help out working on it. We're going to be discussing things like that. Call any one of us to talk about things that are bothering you. But let's get it out there. Let's write letters to the papers and see if we can get some kind of a thing started on some of these issues so we have a debate. And we'll try to run debates. We welcome debating some of the Democrats. We've asked them to, and we started a couple years ago, and they just didn't want to continue. But I think that's a good thing for the Nashua.
I think Ken Gibbs was the only one that had enough guts to do it.
Yeah.
And I say
Ken did
that
it for a while.
because I never agreed with him, but you know what? He at least had the courage to do that,
Yeah.
and with of all people, with Al Baldessaro. You know.
Well, you and I
But that was a
debated
good
the
two-sided debate.
person,
Yeah.
the Democrat committee leader here in Nashua with Ken Gidge, and
Yeah.
we did it twice, and then they didn't want to do it anymore.
Well, I think we need to get that spirit back up because we need to have people communicating. Otherwise, you get a one-party system. It's not healthy. Sorry.
So thanks for listening in. We enjoy hearing from you, and please continue to look at our shows now. We have 2 a month on the panel discussion, and we have others that are running as individual interviews.
And it's okay to say Merry Christmas.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Merry
Happy
Christmas
Hanukkah.
to all of you. Have a safe New Year's also.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.